Welcome back to the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast, getting gritty with it with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, Vasili Gianarakos. Vasili, welcome back for another episode.
Yeah, how's it going, Yariv? I mean, I'm excited for this week. We got Steve Kournianos, the draft analyst himself, on. So we're going to get into some great draft talk and just hockey talk in general. So how have you been, though, Yariv? How's things going on your end?
Going well, man, and appreciate that. And our guest for the evening, Vasili mentioned him, Steve Kournianos from the Draft Analyst. Welcome back to the show, Steve. Super excited to have you on. The Flyers have nothing really exciting to focus on right now except for the draft. So it's perfect time to have you on. Steve, welcome back.
Yeah, Vasili, Yariv, thank you as always. Always looking forward to this. We've been playing this for a while, so it's gonna be a very informative couple hours, I'm assuming, hour and a half, maybe. Who knows how long it's gonna go, but it's gonna be some serious graduate level, maybe doctor level hockey talk, as always.
I like that. And for those who are not aware, check out his pod. I like that you started podcasting again. I listen to, I don't think all of it, but I listen to a lot of what you've released recently, and it's just really quality content.
Vulgar. It's very vulgar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very vulgar.
I will
cursing.
I will
It
say,
makes
but
it makes it more fun.
I laughed through pretty much 95% of that vulgarity. So I think it is appropriate. Yeah, I think you're awesome at podcasting, dude. You're great at sitting there by yourself and just kind of talking through like a narrative of what clearly is like a combination of what is in your head and what research you have done. And you put it together very nicely. I will say that.
Well, I appreciate it. Listen, it's my therapy, man. That's all it is. It's my hockey therapy. I have so many thoughts in my head throughout a given day because hockey's on 24/7 in my mind, on the screens, everything. And so, I catch myself talking to my phone, like recording stuff. I'm like, I got to get this on a podcast. So I'm glad people like it. Really, I'm glad they appreciate it, and it's really the one thing that drives me is that I feel that the hardcore hockey fans, like real nut job crazy hockey fans, like we kind of get like marginalized sometimes. Like it seems like sometimes you get like dumbed down versions of broadcasts and the way that the game's covered in print or digital. And, the analytics side is very academic and high level, but sometimes it's too high level and academic where people won't really understand it. So I try to kind of marry both worlds and, just say whatever's on my mind. Today's podcast I did was 4 hours.
There you go, though.
But I was looking forward more to this one. This is like the stuff I look forward to. Just shooting the shit with a bunch of hockey crazed people.
I love it. I appreciate that. Yeah, and it shows. It shows when I'm listening to you, and I feel like I get to learn a lot about players that, quite frankly, I don't think most podcasts, and I don't want to include a lot of the professionals because I don't know, because when it's like their job, you can watch a lot of hockey.
Yeah, exactly.
But like a lot of local how much time do you really have to watch hockey? And I know you dedicate the time, and you have so much information on all these players. Even if you're not right on all of them, it's not really the point. It's like you're a guy who can be part of that conversation about legitimately seeing it and being there, and maybe holistically, if there's a consensus, it's like, that's the star, whatever. But I think you're in there, man, and it's awesome. And it's awesome that like you just provide that to everybody.
Listen, that's what it is. Like, what good is it? I can't talk to my wife or my daughters about it. I catch myself talking to my wife like, hey, did you see what Mitch Marner did? And she's like, anyway, you can pick up the kids today? I'm like, all right, anyway. So.
Yeah. But Vasili, maybe you feel this because I feel like you've joined this as a consistency, like new in your life, relatively new. Do you find yourself like not having to get it out as much like during the day? Like I find that I have this outlet. It's like I don't have to talk to my buddy who doesn't watch sports about the Flyers.
At least for me, I mean, at work and stuff, most people I work with don't watch sports or watch hockey at all. So like on a day-to-day basis, like I'm not really going to be talking about it there. Some of my buddies are huge hockey fans, so like we'll talk in our group chats and stuff. But unless you're actually
seeing, isn't that like a sin in Canada to like not like hockey, or is it not like that?
No, I mean, like for some people, Some people aren't into it. I mean, how they used to be. Honestly, some people. I feel like basketball is a lot bigger here now than hockey. Like not like obviously taken over anything, but it's got like grown the popularity. So a lot of more people are into that. But yeah, group chats for me, and then that's hockey talk.
Got to get hockey players on Instagram.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotta get Connor McDavid. Got to get him in trouble with some hot celebrity or something to get the sport popular again. All right, let's get in. We got a lot of awesome stuff to talk about. Steve, we'll start off with Flyer stuff, and then as we like open up the episode, we'll just go straight into prospects. We'll make that like the main course of a lot of this because as we know, this year the Philadelphia Flyers had a very, very, very inconsistent, poor, shitty season. Call it whatever you want. But at the end of the day, they ended up with the 4th worst record in the NHL. They have now ended up with the 5th overall pick. And I do have to ask, how is it justified to create a position where you're most likely going to drop back in the draft through the lottery? Is that just me, or like I get that the math isn't fake, but
the system just doesn't make sense in my opinion. Like if you're 4th, the most logical thing for you to be 4th should mean that you should stay 4th, not drop to 5th. Like that doesn't make sense, like mathematically to me. Like obviously the math does make sense the way they kind of like put it together, and kind of put the system together and how the lottery works. But in my mind, logically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, when they created the lottery system back in the mid 90s, right? The first one I believe was 1994, and the whole purpose was to prevent. Like Quebec at the time was just getting first overall picks year after year. That was so bad. And so they came up with a system, and the system worked where it was like only the 5 worst teams in the league can be in the lottery. They were the only ones who were allowed to win it. And let's say if 5 wins it and everybody else gets knocked down, the league's, I guess, viewpoint was, in a way, it's kind of like robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like you're picking 4 or 5, 3 or 2. The real prize is first overall. You get a couple of exceptions where 1 and 2 are almost equal, and it's a matter of preference. But ever since the Crosby draft in 2005, where everybody had a shot at the first overall pick, which was stupid, but they did it because they needed attention back on the sport again after the shutdown.
Yeah.
But now it just and I give them credit for tweaking it. But I agree. Like, why are you punishing a team went through enough in the regular season? They clearly need help. So why are you allowing them to get knocked down? But again, when you lock in a draft position without a lottery, or you just say, "Hey, you're 4, you're going to stay there," it'll. I think they fear that it will incline. Teams will be inclined to
tank. Exactly.
And to play the schedule / standings game in the regular season, and because of Pittsburgh back in '84 with Lemieux, and they feel like they never want that to happen again. Whereas Quebec, same thing with Lindros, with the Lindros draft in '91, where I think it was Pierre Paget was the coach, and was it Lacroix or Olbu? I forgot the names. Anyway, they were freaking just making sure that the Nordiques
they were getting first, yeah.
And the Leafs were also involved in that too. The Leafs were trying to lose as well, and when they realized they didn't, they traded away. Well, they traded away the pick to. Well, they had already traded for the Niedermeyer, Tom Carver. But anyway, the point is, I guess to answer your question is, they're just scared of teams playing the standings schedule game in the regular season where you literally are tanking. But we're seeing teams kind of. They did that this year where the Flyers, I wouldn't say the Flyers tanking, but the Flyers basically took Lehigh Valley and went whoop and put them right in Philadelphia for a lot of games. And they could always disguise that as, well, we want these kids to play anyway, we suck. But part of that is also getting the better draft position, I think, at least.
Yeah, I understand too, like trying to stop tanking. The only thing that doesn't make sense for me is, I mean, 4th and 5th, there could be a lottery like from 1st to 5th, or how they do it now. Either way, it just should be like, okay, 4th shouldn't be a higher probability to
50% chance to stay in your spot, not to drop to 5th.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
I was shocked when I saw that, but Look, it is what it is. I don't think it's the end of the world. And luckily, it happened this draft and not like, can you imagine having imagine having 2 and then dropping to 3 next year's draft?
Well, that's not on Michkov,
According to the Hockey News, they have Fantilli ahead of Michkov. And when I saw that, I was like, all right, wait a minute now. All right, where did this come from?
I don't know about that.
And I'm sure we'll talk about Bedard and Michkov, but I agree. It's like it's going to be nuts next year. You will see teams have been scouting these 2 kids for it'll be the 3rd or 4th year they've been scouted.
Yeah.
Like hardcore.
Yeah.
So
when you're that good that early, it's like
and then they get better. They're not. They haven't had any I don't know how do you play. Like they continue to elevate. It's not even their freaking draft year. It's not even their draft year.
Bedard seems like a combination of what's his name, McDavid and Cole Caulfield, and somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
he's really good.
They're so smart, man. They're so freaking smart. That's the thing. Forget about the skating and the shot and the passing. They are so smart. They outfox everybody. I watched the MHL finals, and Siska Jr., Krasny Armia, they're a really good defensive team, and we'll talk about the goalie that the Flyers signed, but they tried really hard to slow him down, and they really couldn't do it. And this kid is only 17 years old, and he's still finding. He just scores a goal a game, sometimes 2 goals a game.
He literally had 100 points in 62 games, and he's 16. So
it's
insane. How do you even do that? And there's people in that league that are up to potentially 20, 21 years old.
Yeah, it's like the CHL or the USHL. There's some guys who are 21.
Exactly. So that's nuts to think about.
Yeah. But so you talked about you just brought him up, Ivan Fedotov. Maybe this is a perfect time to get into him because he is on our list here for topics. And Flyers recently have signed him to a contract, a 1-year deal, which I would say is really exciting because one, they took a flyer on him right in the 7th round. He's a big kid, but his numbers have always been good in the KHL. They were never bad prior to this. They were always good. And then this year, it seems like he kind of took his game to the next level. It's something to get excited about. He's an adult. I think he's going to be 25, 26 coming into the NHL. Yep. So it's just about that age where they kind of ripen as goalies for the NHL level. I don't know. I think it's really exciting. Steve, I'm going to ask you this first because obviously Vasili and I have already been talking about him. I'm curious, as an outsider, what do you see? Do you see him coming in here and being a definitive at the very least, we're hoping a really good number 2, but can he at least be a competent number 2 at the NHL level and not be a guy who kind of wavers in between both levels?
I think, yes, absolutely. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that no one in Lehigh Valley, if you want to say Sandstrom, to a degree, he was pretty okay this year, but
Ersan was injured for us, which was a big loss.
Ustamenko, I think, had some issues too to start the season. And so I think that there are openings. When you have as bad as the record the Flyers have had and issues in goal, that you're going to have openings. The thing is with Fedotov is that you look at the Russian goalies around the league. Look at Bobrovsky, look at Shesterkin, look at Sorokin, look at Samsonov, although we're still waiting on him. He was a high value prospect. But
Bobrovsky.
Yeah, these guys showed up from Russia, and Shesterkin right off the bat. I mean, he was a number 1 goalie in the KHL. Sorokin was a number 1 goalie in the KHL. Samsonov, number 1 goalie in the KHL. Fedotov, number 1 goalie in the KHL, and a damn good program in Siska, and he won them the freaking championship. They were down 3-1 to Metallurg, and when they went into the playoffs, I don't remember if he solidified the number 1 job before the playoffs, but they had the Swedish kid Rita Born, and it was kind of they shared the number 1 duties for a good team, a team known to have a good defensive system. And he got the number 1 job. He started the playoffs as the number 1, and he rode it all the way through. And they won the freaking title, down 3-1. And I think in game 7, he made 42 or 43 saves, and he was fantastic. And so, yeah, he's done. He's done with Russia. He signed the deal. Clearly, he doesn't want to be in Russia anymore. He signed the deal. So I think his intent is like, yeah, I'm not here to freaking, go play for Reading. I'm not here to, like, I want to compete for a number one job. And this is good for the Flyers. More competition. They drafted the kid, Kolosov last year.
Yeah.
He was a KHL guy. You have Ursin, you have Ostamenko, you got Sandstrom. Obviously, you got Carter Hart. Like, this is good. This is a good thing. Maybe not immediately, but, Shesterkin, when he showed up, and Sorokin too for the Isles, they made not an immediate impact, but they showed fans what they can do. And I think that's going to be the intent. That was the intent behind signing him, was that, hey, like, come and show us what you can do. And you might see an immediate impact, not maybe with the Flyers. It could be with Lehigh Valley, but even still, he's polished. He's ready. He's polished.
It's exciting to hear. I'm really excited to see him play because I've seen him at Dev Camp and I've seen highlights of him, but outside of that, haven't seen much.
Massive. He's like 6'8" or something like that.
Yeah, he's huge. He's 6'8", and like Yariv was saying, I've only seen him really in the Olympics that were, this.
Yeah, he was on the Olympics too. Yeah,
and he looked really good there. And I just think back to what you were saying, Steve, with Shesterkin and Sorokin, those comparisons, like just the fact I think that the Flyers see what those two are doing and what they're capable of coming out of the KHL like that probably has them thinking, well, why not give Fedotov a shot? Because he's playing for Siska, who has a great team, and just goaltenders coming out of there in the first place, and then also just seeing the fact that those two guys came out of the KHL and performed so well. Why can't another starter do the same? And they have him in the system, so
exactly
makes sense to bring him over and give him a shot. And I think honestly that he'll likely be the number 2. Maybe start a little bit in Lehigh potentially to acclimate himself, but I think that's his position to lose, really.
Yeah,
I don't really think the Flyers can afford to go more expensive on a goaltender, to be honest with you. I think it's the perfect year. The expectations are going to be low, right? If the Flyers are terrible again, well, guess what? At least we're in the Bedard sweepstakes. We have 2 first-round picks the following year. We could also potentially trade one and get another first-round pick, maybe. Yeah. Or move up in the draft. I don't know. Whatever it is that needs to happen. I just see it as like this is the year to kind of take risks like that. And the only hesitation I can see some Flyer fans is that we've brought over a foreign or a Russian. Sorry, cell phone. Brought over Russian or foreign kids before, and it hasn't always worked out. Like we brought in some more veteran guys, but I think in this case, this is a guy that's homegrown, and I think, considering he's been so consistent, it's not like just this year he's been good.
Yeah, the past 3-4 years, his numbers are insane. Like,
I don't think he's ever had bad numbers in KHL from what I've seen.
With the VHL too, in the MHL, VHL, every league he's played in, he's done well.
Yeah, so I think it's something to get excited about. I think, to be honest with you, if it wasn't such a piss poor year from like every angle, the fact that players were injured on top of the fact that we weren't very good. And then we traded our captain and everything. But like the Bobby, bringing in Bobby Brink, bringing in Fedotov, bringing in Noah Cates, bringing in Ronnie Attard, like these moves at the end there, I think are enough to at least show that there's a sign that things are progressing in the right direction, at least through prospects,
They have to. They have no choice.
Yeah, I gotta give the young guys a shot and see what they can do, because the veterans that they brought in weren't really cutting it, so you might as well look to the youth. That's it.
What about a guy like Jay O'Brien? What do you think about him, Steve? Like, I know he had a good reputation coming in. I think injuries have slowed him down, but
he was one of BU's top scorers this year. He plays center. He can play wing. He's got speed. He kills penalties.
Yeah.
The Flyers have a lot of quality forward. I don't want to insult anybody here, but I got a little bone to pick with the Hockey News when I saw their Future Watch and they ranked the Flyers the 27th best prospect pool.
What? I didn't even see that.
I didn't see that.
That is crack smoking territory. I'm not going to insult them. I just insulted them. That is crack smoking territory right there.
Yeah.
Like, because their thing has always been, well, if you're a first round pick, they're all about draft status.
Yeah.
Where you were drafted.
What about a guy
But
like
anyway,
Milan Dre or something? Even
nah, it's just anyway. I didn't agree with the ranking, but Jay O'Brien he was deserving of being a first round pick, and he had injury issues. He transferred right from Providence to BU, and with BU, he's one of their best players. So it's just a matter of time before he shows up. I think he's got one more year of eligibility left. I think because of the COVID thing, they extended it. So he'll have another year in college, and then he'll show up at Lehigh Valley, a seasoned college kid, like a lot of the Flyers prospects were that end up at Lehigh Valley, and just take it from there. But some guys take longer than others. He chose the college route. He's got to stay healthy. But like this, the injury thing is kind of a theme with the Flyers prospects from 2015 to 2018.
A lot of injuries to the prospect pool for some reason.
Oh yeah, tons. Lashinsky with the double hip, Allison with everything you could think of.
Nolan Patrick.
Yeah, and
Wisdom, Forster, all of them.
Yeah, you just be more patient with the kids. You let them heal up. But yeah, I like O'Brien. I do. I'm not gonna. I've never written him off. To me, he's one of the top, I would say, 15 prospects. But that's only because they've added on so many since drafting him.
Yeah, and I think that's again, we don't have that high impact guy, but I guess that'll get into our topic, and maybe we'll get right into it then. Right now, but the Flyers don't have that top guy that kind of, the league is looking at. I think at 5, there's an opportunity here. Yeah. I know this isn't the strongest draft ever, but I also know that there's a large collection of players. And actually, let me diverge real quickly here, because we were talking about Russian players. Do you think that the Russian players are getting kind of downvoted or, pushed down the rankings, and that some of these guys are probably better? Like a guy like Yariv. Like, is he normally a top 5 pick and has kind of dropped to number 10 because he's Russian, playing in a different league? Like, are we dealing with any of that? Because I heard that would be the case, but I don't know if that's actually like
Central Scouting dropped every major Russian prospect in their final ranking from the midterm. Every single one. Pick any top 20 Russian prospect that plays in Russia, and they dropped them. Some cases they dropped kids like 15 spots. And the beef that I had with it was that I was watching the MHL playoffs where a lot of these kids played. They were fantastic. There was one, like Trakazov, Yurov didn't really play in the MHL playoffs because he was up with the big clubs, but every single Russian kid that of note was Miroshnichenko was dropped. But they played a double standard, Central Scouting did, by elevating kids who were hurt, who weren't even playing. And so the question to ask is that based off of their own bias, or is that based off of feedback they're getting at the rinks from NHL scouts? Like, yeah, we already got the word from the big guy, no Russians this year. Because I think, think about it. And this is my conspiracy theory. CCM dropped Ovechkin, right?
Yeah.
The insurance, the ad with Ovechkin's wife and Backstrom, that got dropped. Round boycotts and bannings at the IIHF. They banned the kids. The CHL import draft banned Russians. So this is it seems like a collective effort on the part of North American leagues and hockey bodies or organizations to punish Russia for, whatever you want, what's going on with Ukraine. And it's trickled down to the draft rankings. Now, I don't care. I don't care what the hell are those kids on the front lines? Are they the ones holding Ukrainian kids hostages? No, they're hockey players. Yeah. So at the end of the day, the question I ask is Central Scouting trying to do a mock draft, or are they making a political statement, or are they literally ranking the best players available for the draft? Because in 5 years, do you think anyone's going to care what happened in Ukraine versus Russia when, let's say, Gleb Cherkasov is a 35 goal scorer in the NHL? Because you know what the narrative is going to be. It's going to be like, wait a minute, why did this kid fall? Well, there's your answer.
Yeah.
So
that's why I brought up a guy like Yurov. Is the team going to get essentially a steal if he drops like 12, where this guy really shouldn't be that low?
Contending teams now. Teams that won 50 games are going to have the opportunity to draft kids who are not into right. What was it? Not too long ago, January, were considered to be locks for the top 15 of the draft, and now we're seeing people knock them down, and they're allowed to do that, and they're allowed to not even give a reason. That's their prerogative. I'm keep your eyes open on these Russian kids, because
I suspected it.
Miroshnichenko, Cherkasov, Paravalov, Duda, Grudinin, Karamazov. That kid was a stud in the MHL playoffs. They had him ranked like 21st. They dropped him down to like 45 after he had this fantastic playoff run. So unless they have information where the kid's doing shady stuff, but that's never stopped them before. Look at Kai Uchez and Mitchell Miller and Logan Mayu, where those kids literally did bad things, and they're like, rank them anyway. So we'll see.
Well, opportunity for a team that doesn't have a second round pick. Maybe somebody drops to the third.
Yeah, I don't really think too that's a coincidence. I mean, if you see all the things that they're doing collectively, like against the Russian leagues and everything like that. So as you stated, I think that's totally planned by them, and really it just hurts the kids who are trying to get drafted as high as they possibly can, because, like you said, they're not the ones that are involved or here. They're just playing hockey. So it really
and again, it's just weird how. Like if I'm a GM, I want job security. I don't want to get fired. I don't want my coach to get fired. I want to win games. If I'm an owner, I want packed arenas. And so this is the last thing I'll say about it, is that look at the top 20 scores in the NHL this season and look at the top 15 goalies in the NHL this season. If you go by, let's say, points or save percentage.
A lot of Russians there.
Yeah. A lot of Russians, right?
They're talented, that's why.
Yeah, so like Kaprizov. We always talked about the Russian factor. The Russian factor was based on not being able to sign them because they want to stay in Russia. Well, now these kids definitely probably want to stay in Russia because you're vilifying them. But at the same time, they make more money in America. And they know there's always going to be one team, whether it be, let's say, the Colorado or the Rangers or like Flyers. Like, yep, you're Russian? Come join us. We don't care. Can you play hockey? That's good enough for us.
It would be it would be insane. I mean, if you just look at the Russian players over time, imagine you actually let that affect you. Like you think about Malkin or Ovechkin, like not wanting to draft these guys or letting them drop to 5 in the draft, even, not to 1, where they probably would be in most drafts, how good these guys are. Or even like Sergei Fedorov was like my favorite player. I loved him so much.
He's Fedorov's coach.
What?
He coached Fedotov. He's Siska's coach. He won the championship.
Perfect. Bring that energy in here. And then obviously there's Pavel Datsyuk, who's, he was like, that guy was like the best player in the league for how many years?
Just the defensive game for Datsyuk.
Everything, dude. He did everything at such a high level. It was crazy. All right. I'm kind of thinking about reversing this now. I'm thinking let's get into the draft and then we'll get into Flyer stuff. Because we got like coach stuff and we can talk playoffs and all that afterwards. But let's get straight into the draft. We already started talking about it. Flyers had number 5th pick in the draft. I think, I'm sure you're going to talk about your rankings all over the place, but I do want to, we have your top 10 in mind, but let's talk about this as we move forward. We kind of know the names. I do want to go through your top 10, but also keep in mind, like, who would the Flyers want to take and who would you take, right? So it's kind of like 3 questions in one. What are the rankings, top 10? Who do you think the Flyers should take? And then who would you take at number 5? I guess in that position, given what you really thought on your personal rankings, do you have like an opinion there on that 5 spot for the Flyers?
Just my disclaimer for the rankings that I made a decision to not change them when I made them in January, at least the first round. I said, I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm not going to get influenced by tournaments. It's an experimental, so it's not going to be the way going forward for the way I do it. But I just want to see how things turn out. And I could go back about, you know what? I wasn't influenced by anybody or anything or any particular stretch that a player might not have played well or he played great. So luckily, most of the top 10 is pretty normal. Like there's nothing like too crazy about it. I have one kid in there that I'm bullish on, and he plays in college, so you have to worry about it. But number 1, I have Shane Wright. center out of Kingston. Number 2, I have Joachim Kemell, the right wing out of Finland. 3, Matt Savoy, a center for Winnipeg in the WHL. 4, Danila Yurov, the left wing, right wing for Magnitogorsk. He was in the KHL this year. 5, Logan Cooley, Pennsylvania kid, but from the Pittsburgh area. Plays for the NTDP, a center. 6, another NTDP kid, Cutter Gauthier. He's like a wing center hybrid, big kid, skilled. He's real special. He's a really good prospect. 7, Slafkovsky, who's just grabbing headline after headline with the way he's played, the left wing or right wing. I've seen him listed as a center. He hasn't played center all season. So maybe it's a Kournianos situation where he's a natural center and he plays wing, but I've never seen the kid play center. 8 is Jack D. Hughes, the Ken Hughes' son, the GM of the Canadians. No relation to Jack Hughes on the Devils. He didn't have that great of a season stats wise, but he was the top line center for the NTDP before he went to college. So I like him there at 9. At 8, 9, Brad Lambert. A lot to talk about with him. a lot of things to discuss, but a very fast center wing, plays for the Lahti Pelicans in Finland. And then at number 10, I have the first defenseman, Simon Nemec out of Slovakia for Nitra in the Tipos Extraliga. So that's my 1 through 10. As far as who I think the Flyers should pick, is that the next question?
Yeah, let's go with that. We can break down we can go through every player as well, but
Well,
who do you think?
I don't like drafting for need. Looking at the Flyers depth chart and
BPA.
Yeah, BPA all the way. And BPA could be a bunch of different definitions. It's really based on what the teams think. But
scouts.
If I'm going to do it based on my rankings, I'm saying that Matt Savoy is going to be. Now, he's not big. I know Flyers fans would like a big center, but in terms of like electrifying skill, electrifying speed, and physicality, even though he's not big, he's about 5'10". He's a physical playmaking center who can. He's full of energy. He's like an energy guy, and when you see him carry the puck, he's like a Matt Barzal. So I know Flyers fans are like, well, we kind of have a guy like that in Morgan Frost. Morgan Frost is not explosive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he doesn't have he'll impress you with his stick handling and his moves, but in terms of straight line speed, I mean, Savoy might be among the best skaters in the draft. So I think that with all those scoring wings that the Flyers have, you can address a need. Right. And you could also, because they don't have like a presence down the middle. Kevin Hayes, all right. But I think Savoy is a guy that you could definitely build around. He's a guy that I just think would be perfect. If they decide to go a different direction and focus on size and physicality, then maybe a guy like Gauthier or Slafkovsky would work out. Because watching the playoffs, you're seeing how big and strong teams are and how physical the game is. And you'd rather have the 6'2" physical talented kid over the 5'10" physical talented kid, I guess. And then if they go defense, it's going to be one of the two, Jiricek or Nemec. And with Jiricek being the more physical, big shot, kind of like a Ronnie Attard in terms of his shooting prowess, whereas Nemec is like the Erik Karlsson / Roman Josi puck manager. Power play specialist, so on.
So I got 2 questions. Sorry, Vasili, if you have a question. So
No,
first, why I've seen Savoy high, obviously, but why does somebody like Button have him all the way? I think he had him like 17.
Because he hasn't played in any tournaments, and Button loves tournaments. That's why. He loves tournaments. If Matt Savoy was at the U18 Worlds last year or at the World Juniors this year, chances are Button would have ranked him high. The guy, listen, he's a very smart man, lifetime in hockey. I respect him a ton, but he's the main TSN draft guy, and I question how much he watches, like how much prospect hockey he watches. And I could say that for a lot of the guys. And again, it's just the reality of it. And I'm not the only guy that thinks that. We have like a kind of like an inner circle of prospect junkies and nut jobs, and we always view it's one thing to be bullish on a kid, but he's a guy that you wonder, where's he getting his information from? Is he going to rinks? I don't think so. Is he combing through film after film and producing products? No, he produces only like 5 to 7 products a year related to the draft. And so just keep that in mind. Like, when I see Savoy down at 17, he's completely allowed to do that. It's within his right. And I'm not going to knock him for ranking him that low because there's always guys with size. You got to, worry about it. But, Savoy does not have an international resume. He did when he was 16. That was about it. So that's my explanation.
Okay. Well, I noticed you didn't mention Logan Cooley in there for the Flyers, even though you had him ranked at 5.
Well, because I have him off the board. I have him off the board probably at 2 or 3. So
yeah, so it's interesting that you suspect that he will be taken quickly. Yeah, but by your ranking, he's not number 2.
Well, and again, that is based off of the ranking I did at midseason, and it's all fair questions to ask. Why Kemell over Cooley? Well, Kemell I fell in love with last year, and he rewarded me by playing just lights out in the SM League against men, being the leading scorer, wearing the freaking gold helmet as a kid on a bad team. He outshone Lambert, made Lambert leave because Lambert wanted more attention, and he wasn't getting it because Kemell was that much better than him. And then Savoy at 3, there's just something about this kid that, he's a difference maker. You know what I mean? He has a high compete level, and not that Cooley doesn't, but on that NTDP where Cooley's brilliant. He's just a fantastic player, and I have no problem if he goes first overall, or second overall. But I'm going to lean more towards Savoy because he could be physical. He could deliver a pretty big hit for a smaller guy. Cooley can as well, but it's just, I think Savoy might be. And then Yariv is another guy who just blew me away every time I watched him play all last year. If he played in a junior league this year and he played in the CHL, he would have destroyed it, absolutely destroyed it. But he played in the KHL, and they don't like playing kids. They have to earn it. And by the time they're 35 years old, and so that's why I have Cooley at 5. But I think it's going to go. My top 3 mock wise is going to be a combination somewhere of Wright, Cooley, and Slafkovsky. I think that's going to be 1, 2, 3, or in one order or another.
I could definitely see that. I'm wondering too, Steve, just what you think on Shane Wright, just based on the fact that, he's been the consensus kind of number 1 for so long. Do you think there's any chance that he falls out of that slot at all? Or do you think pretty much most teams, if they do get number 1, they're just going to lean towards him because he's been that consensus guy so long? They don't kind of want to go, against that consensus pick.
Very good question. And I've been asked this question a lot. And so I felt like I owe it to myself and everybody else to really dig deep and find out what the hell's going on. And I can't, there's really only one way to interpret what I'm about to say. And this is based off of a ton of games, watching this kid play a ton at live viewings and on video, mostly on video, is that out of all the first overall picks since going all the way back to 2015 when I started doing this draft stuff, he's had the most unimpressive draft year based on optics. His stats were decent. They weren't mind-blowing. He definitely was not the best player on his team. So that right off the bat, you're like, wait, first overall pick, he's not the best player on his team. Some people are trying to make excuses for him that, well, Kingston, they had so many good players that, he had to share the puck, and, he's focusing more on defense. And so he went from being compared to a guy like Steven Stamkos to now he's being compared to Patrice Bergeron because of his defensive play. But, at 5-on-5, there were games where he was invisible, literally invisible. And he was carried by a line mate, whether it be Zayd Wisdom or Paul Ludwinski, another draft eligible kid. And I'm like, wait, this is not supposed to happen. You're a consensus first overall pick. You were given exceptional status. And remember the narrative at midseason after 2 horrific World Junior games, Wright was terrible. The narrative became, Logan Cooley, keep an eye on him. And this came from Central Scouting. And Central Scouting takes a lot of their cues from NHL scouts. So I just watched his postseason, 2 rounds. He just got eliminated against North Bay, and he had a couple of nice goals, but he wasn't all that great. You know what I mean? And so, but what's the word coming from Canada now that Montreal? Shane Wright, the future franchise guy. So if you challenge that, now you run the risk of, being discredited. Like, what are you talking about? What do you know? Like, this guy's a consensus number 1. Well, how many people really watch this kid play every day or almost every day? And it was just not that great of a season, but I could see him being the best player to come out of this draft class. So I think the last thing I'll say is real simple. It seems like Canadian fans have already made up their mind that it's going to be right. It's the second craziest hockey market in the league after Toronto. You could even say it's tied, because it used to be Montreal was more hockey crazed than Toronto, because Montreal won all the time. So the expectations were always higher. That, remember when Jesperi Kotkaniemi went 3rd overall and that woman's face, jaw dropped? Like, that was the beginning of the like, oh, well, is that not a good pick? Is he not worthy? And the kid never lived up to expectations. And eventually they didn't even match the offer sheet. So I think Shane Wright has the maturity and the personality to deal with that adversity if he doesn't do well in the beginning. And I think he's going to have a good coach in Marty St. Louis, and it's a young team, but it's definitely a question that the Canadian staff need to have. And if they draft Cooley or they draft Slafkovsky, I won't be surprised, but a lot of people are going to be shocked, because the narrative right now is he's the consensus number 1 pick, and I got him ranked number 1. So
it's interesting because, again, I'm doing cursory. I'm not, I'm kind of a phony in this. I'm trying to catch up now. But when I look at it, I look at Cooley, and I've talked to Vasili about this over and over again. He's easily my number 1. Like, he's the guy I would pick. Like, if I had first overall pick, he's my choice. He just seems to have everything.
I'd go the same as well.
And you mentioned Savoy for very similar reasons that I want Cooley. I just see Cooley as an upgrade defensively, as like a 2-way game. So I'm like, all right, I get the elite offensive game with the 2-way stuff. If I get Trevor Zegras meets Joel Farabee, like that's exactly what I want in a center. So that's how I kind of see it.
Yeah, I mean, Cooley's got mind-blowing skill. To be a number 1 center on that team where you could have as many as, I guess, 4 or 5 forwards going in the first round, and you're the guy that the coach says, no, you're our number 1. And I saw it last year when they were both when they all got promoted at the U18 Worlds, because everybody was hurt on the older team. Cooley's a special talent. And if you read my scouting report on him, he is a brilliant, he has a brilliant hockey mind. And he's deadly and he's dangerous. There's Mitch Marner to his game, the puck skill and the vision and the agility, escapability, the shot power. He's a one-timer target on the power play. So he kind of like lines up on his off wing in the right circle and just fires bomb after bomb at the net. Really, I mean, that's why I said it's just an experiment. But if I was going off of what have you done for me lately, I would say that Cooley and Slafkovsky and maybe even to a degree Kemell, Jiricek, Nemeth, you could say that they've all kind of either matched Shane Wright in terms of quality play, or they've exceeded him. They've jumped him. So
yeah, I had a feeling that was going to come by the end of the year. Vasili, I'm sorry. Did you have a question? Am I cutting you off?
Oh, no, nothing at all. My only last thought is just wondering on for your top 10 for the defensemen, just with Nemeth and Jiricek, do you think like one of them have potential to be a first pair type of guy in the future, or would you say below that?
Absolutely. And my ranking is what influenced my ranking is I have the 2 top defensemen at 10 and 15. A lot of it has to do, and you could say it's a cognitive bias, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that the top, let's say, 10 forwards from a draft class, pick any year, usually come from the top 10 or the top 15. Whereas the top 10 defensemen from a draft class they come from all over the draft. They come from round
more
2.
Scattered, yeah.
I brought this up on the podcast. A lot of the best defensemen in the NHL come in the second round.
So when I rank them at 10 and 15, it's kind of like a cover my ass. Like, I don't want to be the guy that doesn't put Danila Yurov in the top 10. You know what I mean? Because I really see him being a star in the league. But let's be realistic here. The NHL, there's a lot of ex-defensemen who are running NHL teams, and they're coaching NHL teams. They're running scouting departments. They know completely well that a defenseman can be an X factor, a difference maker, and you draft that guy 2nd, 3rd, 4th overall if you have to. You don't care about how long it takes. You know that. Look at Noah Hannafin. You know, I ranked him 3rd in 2015. I was shocked that he fell down to 5 because I felt that is a franchise carrying number 1 defenseman. And for a while there, it didn't look like that was going to be the case. But now you see him on frickin' Calgary, and he is a stud. He's just killing it. I mean, listen, he's plays for a good team, so that's helped as well. But so I think you're going to see, if you watch Jiricek or Nemec play this year, Nemec obviously didn't get hurt like Jiricek did. They are both big-time difference makers on their team. With Nemec being the one of the top scoring defensemen in the league on a team loaded with veterans. And then Jiricek, I mean, ever since he came back from his knee injury at the World Juniors, he has just been on fire.
Is he a Cider comparison, which I've heard?
My comparison is Parayko Phaneuf, prime Phaneuf. Big hitter, big slapper. Big hitter, big slapper, high IQ. Now, Phaneuf, his IQ was a little questionable, but like in terms of like a number 1 matchup nightmare that you want to just sick him on any top line, he's going to hit you. He's going to punish you. He's got a long reach. His skating style or stride isn't pretty, but he moves. He can motor, joins the rush, takes the puck end to end on his own. And really his slap shot, it's plus. It's at the high end of slap shots, and not just among kids his own age. I mean, he almost put one through the net the other night against
I saw that highlight
against, was it France, I think, or I forgot who he played against the United World Championship, but yeah, they could both be number 1s, Nemec or Jiricek.
Okay. Well, and then you hear like it's a weaker draft. I'm like, I get that there's a lot franchise
of depth.
Guys, no, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Now I could tell you 10 reasons why it's not a weak draft.
Well, the 2017 draft was supposed to be week 2, and if you look at that, nobody thought Cale McCarr was in that group, and that guy is putting up, historic numbers right now.
It depends on like what you consider. It depends on what your definition of a weak draft is. If your definition of a weak draft is there's no Connor McDavid, there's no Connor Bedard, it's there isn't a lot of like a star generational, franchise changing guy, then you could call it weak. My definition of weak is based on the pools of the individual leagues, right? Like all those kids. How many kids on their team from, let's say, the WHL are number 1 defensemen? How many of those kids are top 10 in scoring amongst defensemen in their league? There's so many variables that go into it. And so, in my opinion, you cannot call a draft weak when it is loaded from the top down with 2-way defensemen who could put up points. That you could basically have an entire first round. You could have 32 defensemen be in the first round, right? We've never seen that before. But you can do that, and it could be justified. That you could say Jiricek is a justified number 1, Nemec is a justified number 2, Mintyukov, Korchinski justified 3-4, and so on. On top of that, you have arguably the 2nd or 3rd best NTDP of all time, right? So when you have an NTDP that has potential 5 to 7 first-round picks, how could you call that a weak draft? The WHL has a fantastic group this year. How could you call that a weak draft? The only thing that's weak of this draft, the Russian group is fantastic.
Yeah, they're just getting undervalued, really.
The reason why I think people are calling this a weak draft is because the OHL group is below average, and the Finnish group outside of the 2 forwards, Kemell and Lambert, maybe Yanni Niemann, maybe Kaskamaki, it's the Finnish defense group is below average. So maybe because of that. Oh, and by the way, best Czech group we've had in probably 10 years, best Slovakian group of all time. We might have 3 Slovaks in the top 15.
Yeah, I thought
I don't buy it for a second. I don't know where the narrative started. Is it because Shane Wright hasn't locked down number one, or he didn't have that great of a season?
No, I think that's part of it. I think it's part of it.
That
it's
and then
measured off of that.
That too, you're even then. I think too, just the fact that Bedard and Mishkov are coming up next season, that people are kind of looking forward to that.
But if you look at like the 2003 draft, right, which was like one of the best drafts,
best all-time drafts ever.
It wasn't great because it had the best player of all time in it.
No,
it was great because the entire first round was all-star players.
Exactly,
like all guys who were top 6 forwards or
all-stars, trophy winners.
Yeah. Exactly. That, and I agree with you. That's how. And you got me excited, obviously, Steve, when we first did the episode like a while back, because you started naming and then the USN TDP, and I was like, okay, that's enough. Or even if we're like bottom 10, we can walk away with a potential star. Yeah. You know. So I look at 5, and I got to say, Kemell is, to me, I think the biggest X factor player. I think it's really interesting you have him at 2, because I looked at footage of him, and again, I'm catching up. I look at the numbers he put up in his respective league. They're very impressive, especially considering I think he was red hot in the beginning. I think he slowed down a little bit.
He got hurt his shoulder.
Okay. So that would happen.
By the way, 1-1 Tampa, Florida. I'm sorry to interrupt. 1-1 Tampa, Florida.
No, it's okay. That's important. That's seriously ridiculous. But I look at a guy like Kemell, and I know that Fletcher went to go look at him play a couple weeks ago. I imagine he is absolutely in the conversation for the Flyers. I really I like the idea of Nemec or Juracek. Like, they sound really interesting. I'm not going to cry, but I think the Flyers know what they need. They need an elite offensive player, whether that be Savoy, Cooley, or I think Kemell in their mind is higher. I think Fletcher is not going to favor size. I think he's going to favor elite skill set, speed, and explosiveness. Break it down for me, Steve. What about Kemell has you thinking that this guy is number 2 on your list? And do you think, like, if the Flyers are in a position where they have Savoy, because let's be honest, like, Cooley is probably more complete, but if you have Savoy and Kemell, like, which one, if you're the Flyers, like, which one are you kind of going for there?
All right, so BPA, I'm saying Kemell, obviously, but again, you guys have so many freaking wingers who could score.
Yeah.
And the one thing that you have to talk about this, and I'm guessing that the teams talk about this, is that when you have an intense competition, it could hurt the kid's confidence, and it'll maybe could push the most out of him. But the Flyers are loaded on right wing. Yeah, it is crazy. Another reason why they're not the 27th best prospect pool in the league. I mean, it is. Look at the names: Brink, Forster, Zayd Wisdom.
That's an insulting ranking. That's a joke.
McLennan. I mean, I always been a big fan of his.
That's McLennan Savoy as well.
Tuamala was just drafted, even though he didn't have a great season. He was playing in a men's league. And Wade Allison, even when he's on his game, he's such a freaking difference.
I mean, Owen Tippett's still young. We have some really.
I mean, so I think that. BPA, I go with Kemell. Need-wise, I'd lean more towards Savoy, but Kemell, before he hurt his shoulder, man, this kid is a tank. Not only does he have a blistering shot, not only is he an excellent passer, his vision, this guy chucks sauce across the seam onto the tape. He's a fantastic skater, not like speed-wise, just agility. And, the way he's able to just buy himself time and space, doesn't need any help. And you saw his shot at the U18 tournament. That same shot is why he was among the goal scoring leaders before he got hurt. This guy could score from the blue line with a wrist shot. He's done it before. But the physical play, the tenacity, this kid likes to, the minute he steps on the ice, it is game on. He is not messing around, and he will drill you into next week. He's popped guys twice his size. To me, he almost looks like an NHL veteran when he's playing in these tournaments against these kids. Like he's just way, way above them. Now, the World Juniors, he was nursing. He had just come back from shoulder. He hurts his shoulder because he's always drilling people. So
he's not very big. He's only 5'11", 180.
Yeah, but you don't want to get hit by him. The kid's thick. He's solid.
It's like Mike Richards' size. Reminds me of Mike Richards. Was like about the same size.
Well, I mean, he's a quicker Mike Richards, that's for sure. But yeah, he's like, if you run into him, you're going to fall down. I mean, that's pretty much how it is. So all these things, I mean, North American style, top scorer in a men's league until he got hurt, dominant tournaments on his resume. I mean, that's why I got him ranked number 2. And sometimes I feel like I should rank him number 1.
So why Slafkovsky? Why'd Slafkovsky take his spot? Because I remember earlier in the year, is it just the injury to Kemell, you think?
Well, it's just a lot of recency. Like Kemell slowed down. People look at stats. Oh, well, he's not producing like he did. And really, they both play in the same league, right? Slafkovsky plays for TPS. They're a better team. Yip, Kemell plays for Yip. Yip sucked. They're always a bottom feeder. And even on that bottom feeder team, even though he was the leading scorer in the league in goals, he still played second or third line minutes. He wasn't the top line guy there because, it's a men's league and the men got to play.
Yeah, and he's producing a lot too.
Exactly. Whereas Slafkovsky was a bottom 6 winger. He was not in the top 6. He was not producing. He was not getting any type of role that you would think you'd say, oh, that kid's one of the best players on the team. But he was excellent at every major tournament you could think of. He was the MVP of the Olympics. He had 7 goals in 7 games there. And when he came back and joined TPS for the playoffs, he had a second half surge. So that probably explains why. And remember, he's a big kid with soft hands, brilliant hockey IQ, and he could take a beating as well. So maybe, the size advantage. I think skill-wise, they're equal.
Oh,
you know
really?
what I mean? Yeah, skill-wise, they're equal. Absolutely. I mean, Kemell's hands, his passing, his shot. Slafkovsky's just hockey IQ, his playmaking, his vision, creativity for like a 6'3" wing is very rare. But
so it's like a Rantanen type. That's a good comparison. Actually, Rantanen, when he played for, I think he played for Assat his draft year, and Assat was a bad team, and he went to the World Juniors. Rantanen did, and had an impressive showing, scoring goals. So people are like, oh, who's this Rantanen guy? And then he basically carried Assat. I'm pretty sure it was Assat. He carried them in the second half. Like a huge spike in points per game from .019 to I wrote it in the blog when I did a Sky report. And it never left me because he ended up becoming the superstar, a star in the league. But yeah, it's a good comparison because he's a big, thick, strong kid. Doesn't need to be the fastest guy in the world. He'll get to where he needs to get to. You can't really slow him down because he's so brilliant. His vision is outstanding.
Yeah, we discussed last week too. We thought it was pretty interesting. That people had Slafkovsky rated over Kemell, and just why was that? Was it due to the fact that, he had the great Olympics with the 7 goals in 7 games? Would you say like the recency bias of that is probably kind of what propels him further? Just because we talked about it last week too, that, I mean, if you look at Kemell, he's got more points, same league. So it's kind of puzzling to us that Kemell was, further behind Slafkovsky.
Well, the Holinka in August, they both were excellent in that tournament.
Yeah.
And I actually ranked Slafkovsky 3rd in my July list. The list I made before I released my draft report, I always do a lot of it is just gut feeling. I only sat the guys a couple of times, but he was my number 3. And I wasn't the only guy that had him that high. So he's always been a guy who's been on the radar for a potential top 5. But yeah, obviously when one guy is nursing an injury and not playing, and then the other guy shows up to the Olympics, international stage, TV cameras everywhere.
Gotta catch people's eyes, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Now 2-1 Tampa.
Oh, wow. I saw Corey Perry scored, so yeah, he's still doing it.
They're going to go to the finals again.
I wouldn't be surprised. I've been saying, until I see Tampa lose, I can't bet against them. Which, I mean, I'm going to go by that.
I did. I said the Leafs are going to beat them and go to the Cup.
I thought the Leafs were going to win that series. I'm not going to lie.
I thought Tampa, and I live in Toronto, so I had a lot of people telling me otherwise.
Yeah. And, I don't want to go down all Leafs talk here, but, if I were them, I would be so hesitant to panic after losing to Tampa Bay.
No. Don't panic. Nylander, get rid of Nylander. My advice is just get rid of Nylander, field some cap space.
fine, but that's not blow it up. That's not fire your GM.
And you'll get somebody good back too that
Yeah.
you'll probably would be useful for them. So
making a move to try to bolster your team in another location is different, but to say, hey, no, this isn't working. It's like, no. This, in my opinion, this is the first time I saw that team and went, okay, now they're a legitimate contender. But they happen to play the Stanley Cup champions in the first round. Yeah, poor bastards. Yeah, so I think this draft is really interesting. So let me ask you this. Do you think what the Flyers walk away with in this draft is enough to at least... Because in my opinion, if the Flyers didn't miss on Nolan Patrick, if they could just hit on a center, even as good as Joel Farabee, like somebody who's just going to be a star player in this league, if they can be a superstar, that would be perfect. But they need to hit on one of those guys as a center, to your point. Do you think the Flyers can walk away with something like that this year?
Yeah, there's a bunch of centers. I mean, if they want to get cute and maybe go off the consensus board, you're looking at Wright, Cooley, Savoy, and you got kind of Geeky, the big kid, Savoy's teammate for the Winnipeg Ice. Some people compare him to Joe Thornton, potential Joe Thornton, like max ceiling. This kid could be a star. You have the Lambert can play center. Cutter Gauthier looks like they're going to try to get him to play center as well. So there's and you got Luca Bell, some other guys that have names are floating around, but I'm not that high on them.
What's the deal with Lambert? Real quick, sorry to slow you down. What's the deal with him? I feel like this guy is a complete mystery. Like he's so highly touted, but
there's a lot of divisiveness between I think people's like rankings and why he's fallen, even though he was so high like earlier. So.
All right, first off, he's played for 5 teams in 4 years. All right.
Okay, that's understandable then.
His dad is a Canadian who went overseas, and so Lambert has dual citizenship. He's fluent in English and in Finnish, among other things. He might be fluent in other languages as well, but he considers himself a Finn, but his family is based in, I think, Saskatchewan or maybe Alberta. And so, there's always they always try to get him to come overseas. He was happy in Finland, but in Finland, his dad, it's almost like a Lindros story in a way, maybe not as extreme, although I don't know the exact details, but his dad has been a driving force behind his son always leaving. And it seems like the dad is kind of like a Mitch Marner situation as well. Maybe make more recent, like I said, Lindros, but Marner's more where the dad is super intense and always trying to get his son to be in the best position possible. And so that he starts out with Lottie with the Pelicans, I think, which is where he's from in Finland. And then he went to HIFK or EFK, Helsinki, big program. Then he went to Yip. And then he's at Yip for 2 years. And then out of nowhere, and he was actually getting decent ice time with Yip because they were a bad team. But my speculation or my conspiracy theory is that the father didn't like the fact that Kemell was outshining his higher rated son. It was stark as day. Kemell was one of the top scorers in the league. Lambert wasn't doing anything. Well, I don't say he wasn't doing anything because he looked good. He just wasn't producing. So he goes to Lottie. Nothing really changes with his production. Nothing really changes with his ice time. It's always been, it seems like people say, oh, well, he wants more ice time. No, ice time's not a problem. The thing is, though, when he plays at these international tournaments, he's one of the best players on the damn ice. So he's a late birthday. He was at the U18 Worlds last year, was very good, was outstanding in the 2 games at the World Juniors, although they were against lesser countries. So the explosiveness, the playmaking, he's a very enthusiastic kid. He's a good teammate. It's not like he's got like an attitude problem because he's well coached in that regard. But people are concerned over the lack of production in the men's league, and he's been there for a while. But he tore up the U20, the SM Sarja there. So, I'm not going to move him from my rankings. I got him at 9, and I think he has potential to be a star in the league.
That's so weird. He's got.
You think it'll be a big steal for some like team? Do you see him being like the big dropper of the draft, or do you see any one player maybe dropping or rising? Would you say, or is it too early?
Here's the That's a good question. The problem with guys who drop because of like perception or a decrease in stock, usually those guys don't hit, right? Kirill Kabanov, John McFarlane, remember Esposito, the kid that they, all right. But then look at Matthew Barzal, right? Look at,
Travis Konechny.
Yeah, Konechny. The concerns were really with him were over his injury.
Skating. Skating.
Well, skating, but he got some pretty bad injuries that year too. But he won the award. He's the top prospect, the hardest working. What was the name of the award that they give? The EJ McGuire Award. They give it the draft every year to the prospect who exemplifies the most, whatever. But even still, he still went like late, early 20s.
Yeah,
I think it was early 20s, right? Like, what was that?
I think.
Yeah. So the team that you gotta look at is the Islanders for Lambert, because they did it with Lou. Likes to get those guys that fall. Like, look at Aturatu. Guy was almost a consensus preseason first overall pick last year. Ended up going to the second round. Why? Didn't put up big numbers. And then he came back this year. He was fantastic. The Isles, I think they signed him, and he's going to be, potential to be a big time player for them. So as a GM, you don't want to I'm going to draft this kid because I'm worried he's going to become great. Like, no, you don't draft the guy for that. You don't want to do that. But you got to worry. You got to have concerns over like with Lambert. And when I watch him play, so I'll add context to this, is that he's dynamic, he's fast, he's skilled, he's kind of tough. He's not a perimeter player, but he definitely, like, the IQ, decision making is sometimes he gets like trapped into that north-south tunnel vision where I'm going to go straight and I'm going to try to go 1-on-4, or I'm going to do chip and chase when, I had a numbers advantage and I should have delayed at the line and allowed puck support to come because we could have had a 3-on-2 or 4-on-2. So that might be a bit of a problem that he needs to work on. But the numbers don't jive, moving around from team to team, heavy involved father. It looks like he's going to drop, but he's going to have to prove people wrong if he drops. It's that simple.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you think there's any one specific player that's kind of off everybody's radar that you wouldn't be surprised to see move up a lot, or not really? Well,
unfortunately, a lot of them are Russian. Okay. And so that way, but to keep it more North American is the Ludwinski kid for Kingston. I mean, this kid, they Central Scouting dropped him. And it was funny that when they released the rankings, they dropped him. He plays for Kingston, and he actually was on a line with Shane Wright for a little bit of the season. And he is blazing speed, great attitude. Every time I see an interview with this kid, I'm blown away how mature he is, and he's clearly like a leader, right? Gives it his all. And on top of that, he's got a really good skill as well. And during the series, I forgot who they played in the first round. Was it Owen Sound maybe? Or I forgot who they played, Kingston. The guys doing the game weren't even Kingston announcers. They called him a future superstar in the OHL next season. Well, if you're calling a kid a future superstar in the OHL based on his play and his postseason, he scored like 7 goals in the first round playoff series.
That's crazy.
Outscoring Wright, by the way.
Wow.
Central Scouting drops him like 20 spots. I'm like, well,
that doesn't make a ton of sense based on the production.
He was also good at the top prospects game. And Central Scouting and guys like Bob McKenzie and Craig Button have used that top prospects game, a 1-game, exhibition, as a reason to drop or raise a kid. And he was good. So again, I have him in my first round. I said, no, I'm going to reward the kid. He deserves it. I put him in there. But he's a guy that he got hurt, though. Unfortunately, he got hurt in the game 5 against North Bend. I mean, season's over. But heart and soul, elite speed. He was a high OHL priority pick, so he's been on the radar. And again, dude, he outplayed Shane Wright in the first round and most of the second round. They're the same age, same draft year. But people don't want to talk about it. So,
well,
except me and some other people.
That was a good question, Vasili. That was a great answer, actually. Like, kills you even more that the Flyers don't have a second round pick.
I know, right?
And the other guys, just real quick, Jagger Furcus. Although I think he does go in the first round. The WHL kid, this kid, he is so skilled. He is, he's kind of like he's got Bobby Brink skill. He's got like Joe Farabee consistent IQ and lethality. Remember I call Farabee the assassin.
Yeah.
But he's not big, but he plays a pretty tough game. And so I got him in my first round. I don't want to be the guy that doesn't have him there. If he turns out to be a star, I'd rather say, I was bullish and it doesn't work out than be like, oh, I really missed the ball on that one. So I'm taking a chance on him.
Well, I'll be interested to watch those guys. Ludwinski, I mean, has my attention now that you mentioned him like that, and even over Wright too. That's for some pretty interesting stuff, actually. I have to look into him more.
So let's ask this too, because we have this on the list of questions. Do you think that trading the number 5 pick is an option, or is it worth even trading up? Is it worth trading down? Is it worth trading for, like, I'm just throwing out a random scenario here. If Mitch Marner's available for a 5th round pick, right, or something like that. 5th overall, and
obviously
pick.
More, yeah.
Yeah.
Do it. Yeah, trade it. Yeah, no. If you could acquire, and I'm not talking about a veteran 27-year-old about to hit UFA, and I'm not like wink, wink, wrist the line and wink, wink, Ryan Ellis. If you can get for the 5th overall pick, let's just say you got to look at the teams who don't have that opportunity. Let's say they're in love with a Slafkovsky, they're in love with a Cooley, and they have a deep farm system, but they also know that, locker room issues with this one guy, or this guy wants to change because his wife wants to live in this city, or anything like all these factors. Then but here's the thing about trading the 5th overall pick. It hasn't been done in 14 years. The last time that happened was in 2008 when the Islanders did it. They actually had 5. They traded down from 5 to 7 with, I think, Nashville. And then again from 7. No, they traded from 5 to 7 with Toronto. And I think from 7 to 9 with Nashville. But those trades only involved draft picks. Gord Snow was the GM of the Islanders. He only wanted 2nd and 3rd round picks additional. So it's not like last year where we had 3 top 15 picks traded for established NHL guys, right? Vancouver, you guys, and Chicago.
Different strategies.
Yeah, all made those moves. So I don't think they're going to move it. They shouldn't move it.
I don't think they should either.
you could make a very strong argument that as good as Flyers prospect pool is, and I do think it's a good pool. I put a top 15. Is that this kid's going to probably be the number 1 prospect in your entire pool automatically.
Yeah, you can't miss on that or that opportunity.
No. Like Slafkovsky, or not only Slafkovsky is NHL ready, Jiricek is NHL ready, Nemeth is NHL ready. The smaller guys, you might want to give them a year or 2, but Wright, if he's not going to slip to 5, but I don't want to knock the Flyers prospects because I like a lot of them, and a lot of them have really paid their dues and delivered, playing in the minor leagues, and they're ready. But with this pick, top 5, it's the high. I think the non-lottery, if you don't count the Patrick year, I think this is the highest they've picked since JVR in 07.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah.
So
sometimes you got to restock and get those high-end guys. You can't get them anywhere else.
Yeah, right? I don't think the Flyers farm system. I think like after this draft, I think the farm system question is answered for Fletcher. That we have a good farm system. We could right now. You tell me, and this is another reason why the 27 ranking is stupid for the farm system. You tell me that the Flyers right now, if they offered a team a package of Zayd Wisdom, forget about where they were drafted, a package of Zayd Wisdom, Bobby Brink, and Cam York, that they can't get an elite top line, let's say 60 to 70 point score in the NHL.
Of course they could, yeah.
With term. You know what I'm saying? So that's why the Flyers have assets. at almost every position. Maybe right defense could use a little help, but as far as like the issue though with the prospect pool is the center ice position because the health, the injuries.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have them push them more towards addressing the center ice position, but you could do BPA and address the need at the same time. It's possible with this draft.
Yeah, and then you never know. You add a right winger too, like Slafkovsky, that could maybe have some of those other right wingers. They might afford them, tradable at that point. So
yeah,
who knows what they'll do?
Yeah, I mean, look, the way I saw it, I've been talking about Cooley for a while. Like we were talking about trying to change the hopes of the Philadelphia Flyers fan base, and I do want to talk about the coaching situation a little bit here. But even a guy like Savoy, but a guy like Cooley, like I do think you add one of those guys who even let's just say Shane Wright could drop to 5. I don't know, right? But a guy who's like a true potential to be a number one center and clear cut the best prospect in your team. Outside of, I guess you could say Cam York, right? Who's, I guess, an upper echelon prospect as well. But like, if they can just add, I think you can change a lot of the tone because the goaltending, the narrative, the goaltending is kind of set. Like Carter Hart's still young. We have a bunch of young goalies. Like we named it. I'm sure we're going to draft another goalie. We have picks in the future. But I really think just that one guy who has potential of being a star player, even as good as a Matthew Barzal, as good as a 70-point, 80-point center in the NHL, who can match up against other number one centers who we can do as a 1-2 punch with Couturier maybe within the next year, or two. That I think is enough to change the tone of this team.
I would agree on that.
Yeah. I don't think they're that far away, but they definitely have to maybe like take a page out of the Rangers book and retool, keep the core intact, right? The main guys.
Yeah.
And then
I think
use your assets and draft picks and prospects to have the competition, let them earn jobs, and then start making trades. That's the whole thing. The Flyers have not traded their prospects. They've held on to these kids. And some, in retrospect, they should have probably sold high on Allison or Rutsov or, again, LeBears before he always had, the concussion issues. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know if, Fletcher and his crew did a pretty good job in Minnesota with the draft.
Yeah.
So maybe they're like, look at like Eric Sinek and Greenway and Kaprizov. They waited for them and they turned out to be really good. So maybe that's the mentality. But it takes two to tango. But I'm looking at the Flyers. I'm like, listen, man, Lehigh Valley is mostly kids. You're gonna have an influx now, so you're gonna lose probably kids or push them down to they had kids playing in Reading. Yeah. Millman played at Reading this year. Yep. Strome played in Reading, I think, this year.
Yep.
And these aren't like elite premier prospects, but still.
Yeah, we don't like the depth in the prospects. Again, it's just that top tier stuff, which I think is the shiny thing for the fans. You know what I mean? But we kind of need that right now. The morale is really low. Like if you look at the team, like you look at the way people have turned on Provorov, you turn on everybody. It's what so when the losing begins, you start finding enemies within your own team. You start ripping them apart. You start saying this guy's a problem. This guy doesn't fit in the team, and people are just kind of searching for a problem. We need something to kind of deflect away from that. But all of a sudden, that's what I was saying. Like you line up Bobby Brink next to a Logan Cooley or a Savoy, right? You say, hey, like. This is a line. I'm showing you complete line. Oh, we still have Tippett. We still have, you kind of change the narrative that way when you have a bunch of young guys with promise in that same, and then a highly revered guy who other teams in the NHL, would covet. These are things that fans kind of need to, quite frankly, it was an emotional year. I feel like that's
I'm sure.
And losing creates the opposite of what you're talking about, right? Too, where when you're losing as often as they were, obviously people aren't going to be happy and they're going to be picking out on players that, on a good team would have success, but when you're not surrounded by the talent, how are you going to play that well, really? So,
yeah.
So I do want to talk about changing the hope a little bit. I mentioned Barry Trotz. He is available, shockingly. I don't think anybody thought that he was going to be fired that quickly from the island. But I did actually see that he was interviewing with, I think it was Per Friedman.
Winnipeg.
Interviewing with Winnipeg, which... It's not surprising.
Isn't he?
He's from there.
He's from there, yeah.
They need a coach. they have a pretty good core there. It's not like they're devoid of talent. There's some good young talent too, some goal scoring there. Steve, because Vasili and I have talked about him for death already. Well, what do you think about Barry Trotz? Do you think if the Flyers were able to sign him, because I guarantee they're going to go for him, they're going to at least try. They're going to talk to him.
Yeah, Friedman, I mean, he was saying too that the Flyers, he's like number one on their list. Not number one, but he's one of their higher candidates.
He was saying like he's like the Flyers should go all in on this guy.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think, Steve? Do you think Barry Trotz is enough to? Do you see him as a good fit here in Philadelphia? Do you think he's legit?
Yeah, he'd be a good fit. He'd be legit. He could stick it to the Islanders by being in the division. I don't know. Here's the thing. Like, Trotz was brought to Long Island to fix them, and he fixed them right away. And his defense first system, which he had in Nashville, he had it in Washington, he had it in Long Island, clearly worked. People that are concerned that he might stifle the young guys. I mean, they're like, oh, Matt Barzal, if he had a different coach, he'd have like 100 points. Yeah, well, but the goal is to have deep playoff runs and be a tough-ass team to play against. And we all know the Flyers were not a tough team to play against this year. We talked about this, how they didn't have resiliency. They'd get down early and it would be game over. Where Barry Trotz teams find a way to claw back into games if they have a slow start. But usually they don't have slow starts. They usually dictate the terms because of the defense and the ability to you have to have all 6 defensemen have to be good. Yeah. They have to contribute. You know what I mean? And so the question is, does he want to rebuild, or do the Flyers consider themselves rebuilding? And that Trotz like, hey, we want you to help the kids along, or is Fletcher going to be like, well, if I'm bringing in Trotz, he's going to want to have horses. So we got to go now. And now that we have freed up cap space because we got rid of Gostisbehere, we got rid of Giroux. We've I mean. You have Ellis and you have Ristolainen, you have Couturier, you have Lawton, right? Voracek, I think, is still signed, right? Is he?
No, Voracek's traded for what's his name?
Atkinson. Oh my, I'm so stupid. No, Atkinson, yeah, but Atkinson. So there's a former 40 goal scorer. I like Atkinson.
Yeah.
Provorov. I think Trotz could be like, you know what? I know this kid. I know of this kid. Remember, the Islanders and the Flyers is the same division.
Yeah.
That he might say
he would be great for Trotz. I think
I could turn him into something. I could really bring something out of him.
Yeah, like I could get the most out of this kid. And then you got, and like I said, they have so many kids who are seasoned in Lehigh Valley. They're ready. Zamula is freaking ready. Addard. I think York is ready.
Yeah,
and so. If you look at a Flyers defense of, let's say, I'm going to put Zamula in there because I like him, where you could have like Zamula on the bottom pairing. You could have York up there. You have Ellis and Ristolainen and Provorov. If I'm forgetting anybody, I apologize.
Sanheim too.
All right. Sanheim. So
that's essentially that and a Tard. Those are our NHL caliber guys going in next year as of right now.
I think that would be as almost an identical situation that Trotz inherited with the Islanders. That, remember, they didn't make the playoffs. Yeah. They lost Tavares.
Yeah.
So, but the way, and lose a good salesman, he probably sold it like, listen, make us defense oriented. You got the Russian goalie coming in, right? Sorokin. They already had Varlamov, or they went out and got Varlamov.
We have Carter Hart.
The Flyers, I think that would be a couple of good selling points. It's like, yeah, listen, we're really not, we had a really bad year. Maybe you want to blame the coach, the first Vigneault, and then Yo, and be like, with you here, I think that, we could turn things around, maybe not automatically within 1 year, which is what he did with the Islanders, though. Remember, they didn't make the playoffs. They make the playoffs. And then they have back-to-back conference final appearances. I mean, it's like you guys said, give the guy what he wants. He's good. With the money he's making from the Islanders, After they fired him and the money that you guys are probably paying, Barry Trotz can buy a very nice yacht. And now, the one thing I'll say about Winnipeg, I don't want to take this off the subject, but the rumor, and this isn't a rumor that I started. This came from the mouth of James Patrick, former NHL defenseman who coaches the Winnipeg Ice. I don't know if you guys heard this. Is
that Nolan Patrick's uncle?
I think so.
Yeah, it's James Patrick.
Yeah. So, all right. So 3 former Rangers, right? Tom Laidlaw, James Patrick, and Ron Greshner. Very good players for the Rangers.
Yep.
They were all on that team that beat you guys in '86, the big upset. They are all, I think they're all from Manitoba or Saskatchewan. So that they run a podcast called True Grit.
Okay.
And Patrick, this is a coach of a WHL team, former assistant NHL coach, completely broke the code and said that the Winnipeg room is fractured. He said that Kevin Hayes told him that it's the worst room he had ever been in. Remember, Hayes got traded to the Rangers, traded to Winnipeg.
Yeah, from the Rangers, yeah.
And then signed with the Flyers. And then I think Jay Beagle or Cody Eakin. I always get those two confused.
It was Eakin who corroborated it, saying, yeah, I can agree that like it's one of the worst dressing rooms I've ever been in. I did hear that, actually.
Okay, yeah. So and apparently the other thing on top of that was that it's a divided room because of 2 players. And the speculation is that it's Wheeler and Scheifele. Okay. And look at all the guys leaving there. Maurice quit.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't like hockey anymore. Bufflin quit. He's like, I don't like hockey anymore. Trouba got traded.
Line wanted to trade. I mean, yeah.
They all, so where there's smoke, there's fire. So maybe Trotz is like, all right, listen, you want me to come in here? It's my hometown.
One of these guys got to go if I'm going to come.
One of them is not where they're talking about.
Just keep that in mind. That's why I think that if the Flyers, obviously that they know more than we do about the whole situation. But
so let me ask you something, because I want to bring up Ivan Provorov as somebody who's seen Provorov from the outside for a while. People really soured on him. I have not. Vasili knows that.
Yeah, neither have I.
In my opinion, this is the youngest starter we have on the team. He's been carrying the load. I think he did struggle at a point this year, but he actually finished really strong at the end of the year. Statistically, he did about the same as Sanheim outside of the plus minus. But again, he didn't play his best year, but I see him as 25. I see most great defensemen have struggled in their mid-20s at some point. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this guy's still capable of being a number 1 defenseman in the NHL. And how do you see things?
He just looks unhappy. He looked unhappy. He looked like, and he's a competitive guy. Going back to his days in Brandon, where he was like the general. He was the guy in charge. And I don't know enough about the Flyers to say like what Vigneault told him to do or how to play, but it wasn't too long ago where he was one of the top young defensemen in the game. And unless there's something personal going on, like he's got some off the ice issues that might be impacting him.
He's not getting along with the media right now.
You know what? But that's never
when you're losing though. That's
never a prerequisite to be successful. Chris Pronger freaking hated the media. He still hates it.
Yeah.
And he was everywhere he went. Well, I'm taking you to the cup. See you next year. So I think that I agree. He's still way too young to write him off. He definitely had a bad year. He made decision-making with the puck has always been a strong suit. And when I watched him play, he made some curious and odd decisions. But again, trying to do too much, maybe, knowing he's a team leader. And the 3-1 Tampa, it looks like they're going to wrap that up.
Wow. I saw Corey Perry had 2 points too. So
Florida, I guess, tied it, and I guess they reviewed it and they took it off the board. They tied it 2-2. They took it off the boards. I don't know what happened, but to answer your question, I think part of the head coaching search, it should be to get the goaltending and the defense fixed, because you have good defensive 2-way forwards. You got Farabee, you got Couturier, you got Lawton. Like there were guys, even Hayes to an extent, could be okay defensively because he's got that quick stick. He's got that long.
And Lindblom, they're good defensively as well.
Yeah. So I think that fixing the defense core and the goaltending situation, being a tougher team to play against. Look at Tampa. We always think about Kucherov and Stamkos and Point and Hedman. That team in the third period was the best in the league at limiting shots, limiting high danger chances. They basically just it's not like really finding a way to win. They just shut you down. And it's a full all-in commitment to defense.
Their third and fourth lines are really great at that.
Yeah, and you will never get that from an Alain Vigneault coach team. Never get an all-in commitment. You'll get it from a Tortorella team. You'll get it from a Barry Trotz team. Maybe you'll get it from a Paul Maurice team, depending on, with Winnipeg, he had all those thoroughbreds up front. So, you're asking Kyle Connor to play defense Ehlers, but the question that Fletcher's probably asking himself and his staff is, which way are we going? Let's meet with the players. Let's ask them, because they have their exit interviews and their meetings. Why? Tell me what was wrong. And I'm going to assume a lot of them, the goalie said it like, hey, collective team defense, being tougher to play against, limiting chances against, not getting down early in games, having better starts to games. And that is something Barry Trotz can fix. That's something Tortorella can fix. I don't know if Tortorella want to coach the Flyers, but
what about Peter DeBoer? And I feel like I kind of know him. We have him on our list here because he was recently fired. I think he's kind of a little too average.
Well, he's like a
players coach, apparently.
Players coach, up tempo, aggressive forecheck, a defenseman activating a ton. I don't think the Flyers want to try that next year. And although he is a proven, winner, if you want to call him that, because of just his track record of taking teams to, with deep runs. Yeah. Was it 3 teams, right? He did it with
3 different teams. Yeah,
he did it with the Sharks, and he did it with the Golden Knights, like 3 conference finals, or in some cases Stanley Cup finals.
Yeah, 2 cup finals, like a bunch of conference finals. So
yeah, but Vigneault also had that same
pedigree as well. So you got to be careful, I guess, what your team has and kind of what you're looking towards. Like you said, maybe they don't want to go towards an up-tempo guy because that was kind of their system this year and it fell apart on them. So you also kind of repeating things, right?
You also have to look at the rest of the division. Who are you competing against? Like, you want to make the playoff, you got to leapfrog someone.
Exactly.
Like, how do they play? You know what I mean? And to me, I think the Flyers are in that group right now. To me, they've always been in the group, the bubble group. They're not in the lowly, downtrodden, oh my God, we suck, rebuild everything and fire everybody. I think they're right now with the Columbuses and the New Jerseys, and maybe you want to, in the conference, Ottawa and now Buffalo. Well, really every team in the conference now is like, rebuilding one way or another, those that didn't make the playoffs. Because we had that huge disparity, right? The Eastern Conference was settled by mid-January.
Yeah.
But, building from the net out, it looks like they have the net part solved. It could be an 07-08 situation again.
It's possible they go right back to the Eastern Conference Finals with the right tweaks. You add a couple
or just they're competitive again. Right now, you want them to be competitive again.
Yeah, exactly.
Make the fans happy. Passionate fan base. Reputation as being tough and hard-nosed and physical. You know what? If Bobby Clark's got a say in this, frickin' bring it back. Vigneault is not going to give you smash-mouth hockey. Bring it back. All you see is the playoffs, smash-mouth hockey.
That's true.
But maybe bring it back.
The thing is, that's interesting, I thought, with Trotz is just like, his system frustrates teams so much and like stifles teams almost to the point where they make mistakes. I feel like the Flyers have been frustrating to play against for years at this point. So like that'd be a welcome thing, obviously, just for the culture or just the fact that you could frustrate another team with your own play, right?
Yeah, I would like to be the team that outcoaches the other team for once.
I know the one. The only issue that you might have with that like a defense first system is a lot of the prospects you've drafted are skill guys. You know what I mean?
That's what I mentioned last week. That like with some of the younger guys, like a Morgan Frost, that is kind of finding his way. How's he going to fit into a Trotz system? You know what I mean? Or some of the other younger prospects, like how are they going to fit in? And
they'll have to wait. They'll have to wait. And that's where the trading part comes in the offseason, where identify your future Lehigh Valley Phantoms, because you're going to have a lot of them coming in. Camp is going to be bananas. Development camp is going to be bananas. A heavy competition, goaltending especially, and say, all right, which 3 to 4 kids can we put in the lineup now? Because we want to make the playoffs, so we're going to start off with only about 3 or 4 kids. Who's it going to be? And I don't know. Like I just think it was just one of those years, man. I really think it was like last year was crazy.
All the injuries too.
Well, 2 years ago, right, coming off that
not having Couturier or Ryan Ellis really.
Yeah, it's like your number one center technically.
But injuries are going to happen, though. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
You have to sustain them. You can't, guys get hurt. It's an easy for us fans to say, well, this guy was hurt and that didn't help. But the key is to build a team where, hey, my top guy's out, no issue. We got, 2 guys in line ready to take that job. Yeah. And so I think the Flyers structure, like depth chart wise, at every position, they can do that. But one of the key things that Fletch is going to have to do is figure out what's he going to do with Lehigh Valley right now. Like all those kids down there, they've been down there forever. So what are you going to do with them? If you don't trade them, you literally just wasted second and third, and in some cases first round picks on kids that never did shit for you. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because they were blocked or they were buried or they were hurt. So get something in return. Get 6th or 5th or 4ths and just keep that system going. So
yeah, they have a bunch of guys in their early 20s right now, and like Isaac Ratcliffe is one of them. They got to figure out what to do with him.
Cates,
Cates is probably making the Flyers. He was extremely.
He was great. Yeah.
In his debut.
Lashinsky.
Injury problems for Lashinsky.
But when he plays, he's really good. He's a really good playmaker. He's and he plays center ice.
I know.
I
think the Flyers are hoping that this is my guess is because I think you're right, and I think we have a bunch of these guys. And this is what I was talking about next year, and I do think they're making the moves for this. I think they're gonna go with a young team next year, where they weren't doing that prior, but I think they're kind of like, well, we don't really know what to expect. We can't afford to hurt our salary cap, but we do have a lot we can do in preparation for the following year. And if we're really that bad, guess what? At least we're in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. We have 2 years, right? They have this year, and then next year is a gamble. And then the following year, they have 2 first-round picks that following year. Then they'll probably be aggressive. But I do kind of see them sitting out, as far as like the aggression and adding players. Like right now, top thing is to get rid of JVR going into next season. I think that's a big thing. If they can get rid of him, maybe they make a big move, but otherwise,
they don't have the room.
Yeah. I don't think they have the
so many young. You have so many young guys too that could take next steps forwards if they're given like the opportunity and the ice time, right?
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So I got one more thing here, Steve, and I just thought. Well, actually, I got 2 more things here, and I do want to bring this up before I close on the last thing. You brought up something on your podcast which I really liked, and it was comparison of. Because people will refer to like being in your prime, right? But you said like being in your peak performance, right? I think that was the differentiation. And I really like that you said that because I think like a lot of people are like, this is kind of like the goalie thing. Like you can have a good young goalie like Carter Hart, right? At 23, who's a starting goaltender in the NHL. You could say, yeah, he's in his prime physically, but it's probably not his peak performance. And I really like that you differentiated that because that's kind of what I see with defensemen. Like even Provorov, like I saw him have great years. I think he physically hit his prime, but I think defensemen, they're at their best probably around 27. That's like that peak performance. And it's probably like 26 to 32. It's probably when they're best defensively. Do you kind of like, is that how you saw that? Because I thought that was a great way to differentiate that. And I think that's how people really need to think about players is like, yeah, they hit their prime, but they're not really in their peak of their prime, right? They're not actually the best that they can be at 22 years old. Even a guy like McDavid, like I wouldn't be surprised if at 27, he has like the best season of his career or something like that.
Yeah. Peak versus prime or prime versus peak. It's basically exactly what you said. Like Nick Lidstrom, right? His prime was the mid to late 90s. His peak, though, were the 2000s, right? Mid to late 2000s, where he's just running off consecutive Norris trophies.
It's ridiculous.
Pronger, he's kind of like, and Bork. I'm talking about defensemen now. These guys had their prime was just in the middle of their peak. You know what I'm saying? Like Pronger he began his peak really and when his prime began, like when he won that Hart Trophy, and that peak was like an extended peak. It was like a ridge. Yeah. It just kept on going and going all the way up until really taking the Flyers to the freaking cup finals,
He's amazing.
right? You know what I'm saying? So I think that it gets me so mad when fans call kids busts at like 21 years old, or like, you know what? Imagine you get a new job at like Staples, or you get a new job as like a paralegal. Like your first 2 years there are going to be nothing like your, let's say, fourth or fifth year, where like you're a manager or you're a decision maker, and you might get better mentorship, and someone gives you a come to Jesus moment, or provide you with a come to Jesus moment in terms of, so there's so many things that factor into that. But the thing is, with the salary cap and how these young kids, their contracts aren't really that long. It's like you have your ELC, and then it's 1 year or 2 years, then 1 year, 2 year RFA, and then UFA's coming up. Mm-hmm. And so that's always on the kid's mind. Listen, at the end of the day, guys, this is their job. They want to make money. Yeah, they want to play and win the Stanley Cup, but they want to have a house. They want to have give money back to their parents who drove them to the rinks every day for 15 years. So they like, that's a big part of it. And to do that, sometimes it requires going from organization to organization, team to team. And I don't like these teams, how impatient they are with some of their kids. I like the fact that the Flyers are patient with them. And that way, for example, you're looking at a guy like Farabee. Farabee might be like entering his prime right now, but peak Farabee will probably be like when he's 27, 28, 29. And, depending on the player, that could extend well into his 30s. I mean, look at Mike Smith. I mean, he's like 40 freaking years old, and he's playing his best hockey of his career the last, let's say, month and a half. Like Vasilevsky, though, he's in his prime right now, and he's peaking. His peak has been going on now for a couple of years, and it looks like it's going to continue on. So I think I use peak versus prime more when in retrospect, when we already seen a guy's career, it's over. Now let's identify when was his prime. Messier's prime was the early years with the Oilers, 83, 84, 85.
With the Rangers, right?
His peak was with the Rangers, and that first cup with Edmonton, 90, 91, Hart Trophy 90, Hart Trophy 92, Stanley Cup 94. Impossible Stanley Cup to win, almost. And so, it's an interesting topic. We could talk about it for hours, but, the special talents, you can never say, well, look at Crosby and how well he played in this series. You know what I mean?
Than he's ever been, right? So it's with the generational guys, they just keep finding new ways to reinvent their games, I think.
Absolutely. That's from hard work. Conditioning is a big part of it.
The dedication.
Work, studying film, never just, because what happens when you start hitting your mid-30s, you notice, you're like, oh my God, I just ran as fast as I ever ran, and I'm 2 miles slower, or 2 minutes slower than a year ago. Like, what the hell? And you see a dietitian or a nutritionist and strength conditioning coaches, they'll tell you, like, hey, listen, man, you're getting older. Like, men, we start to go downhill after around, 32 or 33? So you have to work hard at that to fix it. I mean, NFL quarterback, same thing. Bless you.
Thank you.
So, with hockey players, I think the league's gotten younger. It's a younger man's game, but we're still seeing the old veterans kind of show, like, hey, kid, step aside. I'll show you how it's done.
I can still pull it off if I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see a lot of that in the playoffs, too. And then I even look at a guy like Claude Giroux, who had his highest producing season past 30. And then, after he got traded from the Flyers, if you look at the pace he put up in Florida on a team that actually produces offense, it was it was over. It was on 106 point pace with the Florida Panthers. So it's, it depends how you put that game together later in your career too.
And what talent surrounding you, all that type of stuff that factors into it as well.
The last thing I want to end on, I don't think this would be a long question, but I noticed you did say something about Gary Bettman, how you're a big fan of Gary Bettman. And I think that's really funny because I like Gary Bettman and people hate Gary Bettman. And I'm like, as just like a businessman, I don't need him to be my friend. I don't need him to be a nice guy. It's like he increased, I just look at what he did. He increased profitability. He's in a tough position. A lot of tough things happened to him, and I think he handled it. Pretty well. And even with all the hate he gets, I think he handles that well, and how he handles the booing and all that stuff. I don't think he's like Mr. Nice Guy. Like, I don't want him to be like my buddy, but I think it's like a businessman who's running a business. I think he's doing a pretty good job.
Savvy. He's a savvy business guy.
And what do you think, Steve?
Well, apparently you didn't hear my podcast today because I officially broke up with him.
Oh yeah.
And it has to do with the, and again, I don't want to insult anybody because I myself am a guy that understands gambling. I was a gambler myself, sports betting. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes it can also be very dangerous. My problem is the rise in penalties called in the playoffs. He's just way too overprotective of the officials. The officials have been atrocious in this postseason. Atrocious. I talked about the Phantom Rough. You'll hear the podcast. The Phantom Rough was on Trocheck the other night against Boston in Game 7, where he's like, Trocheck just approached Lee and said, "Hey, what the heck was that? Like, he hit my guy," and Lee called him for roughing. And I'm like, wait a minute. 4 minutes into a Game 7, scoreless game, and you call it. So I have a feeling that Gary's, like you said, the businessman aspect of it, he's so loyal to the owners, and rightfully so. Yes, the owners pride to him about all their lost revenue, even though these guys are billionaires with assets and businesses everywhere outside the NHL, that he felt that the gambling thing, and all you see now is sports books, FanDuel, DraftKings, his phone bet, every score update, every ticker is betting related. And I think that might have to, it ties into ESPN. They want more offense, more power play, so call more penalties. And the reason why I'm mad at Gary, after always sticking up for him, is that in 2004-05, when there was that horrible lockout, we all suffered from it. What was the message after the lockout ended? We're sorry, fans. We apologize. We love you. Come back. They started the stick saluted center ice. That was like, and you really felt like it was genuine as a fan. Like, oh my God, these guys really care. We missed you. Thank God you're back. But there wasn't didn't seem like it was anything gimmicky. Like, the shootout was part of it. But that is an on ice thing. The purists hated it, but obviously you understood why. When they came out of COVID, and I gave them so much credit for championing and leading the league, the first pro league out of all four of the major leagues, to get back to playing, to have a coherent plan in place. It was almost a perfect plan where people there wasn't a widespread infections and sicknesses. Yeah, some teams had COVID, but they turned out to be fine. That they decided to help make up for the losses in revenue. They're going to now get in bed with the gambling aspect of the game. And to me, that is a very dangerous game to play. It's one thing for the fans to be involved. Yeah, we all like to gamble. Oh, I'm going to make a bet on this, bet on that. But when the league is promoting it and borderline pushing it to nonstop, incessant yammering on gambling, where every a score update, the host has to say, don't forget to place your bets. I don't like that. And I understand why he did it. And again, I'm not trying to be a goody, but it seems like it's a little bit overkill with the gambling.
Yeah, I agree there though, because even in Canada now, like the sports betting for NHL was never like existing even before like this season. This is the first season it's actually like a legal thing, at least in Ontario anyway. So every single commercial is, the score betting app, another different betting app, and like people,
young kids are doing it, man.
Exactly, which is not the best thing. I mean, in moderation, everything is fine, but when you push it that much, that's where you create the problems for people, right? Young kids
as young as like 5 and 6 bring smartphones with them to elementary school. Exactly. And where I live in Tennessee, all these kids, and just like everywhere else, young boys for the most part are nuts over sports, right? It's their hero. And So, hey, you could all look at my cousin, my brother showed me. You could bet on this. Well, where do you get the money from? Oh, just okay, a lot of these kids have debit cards and bank accounts, and they have their friends link. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. And, I'm hoping that, I hate to say this, I hope we have a Pete Rose moment. And I love Pete Rose, but, but you're going to get a guy, Evander Kane. He denies it and they investigated it. But, I think Gary, other than that, Gary's definitely the right guy for the job. But, and maybe I'll make an excuse for him that he had his hands tied and he's, everything was on the table, I guess. But, the officiating this offseason, it made me consider the fact that hockey betting has to do with goals scored, right? A lot of it has to do with goals scored. The more no one wants 1-0 games. No one wants 0-0.
Everybody wants the over, right?
So how do you do that? Now, if I'm wrong, hopefully I'm wrong. It's that Gary's like, let's just have one damn standard with officiating. No more playoff officiating versus regular season. Don't worry about the current generation. They'll eventually die away. Let's focus on the young generations that when they follow the game, they'll understand this is what right looks like. But holy shit, are we suffering as fans right now? But the revenue's up, ratings are up, goal scoring's up. So purists like myself, they just say fuck off. Well, excuse my curse the language, but they just say screw off.
Oh, that's okay. You could say fuck off.
Yeah, you can curse like
We're good to go. Yeah.
Well,
that was an awesome episode.
Yeah, that was great. Wow. There's a lot going on right now. And it's funny because I just want the season to be over, but it's such an exciting playoff that I can't help but watch it. So let's end with this. What are your guys' predictions for the final two teams and who takes it? I will start with mine. I do think it's going to be Tampa, Colorado, and I do think Colorado will end up taking it in 7 in the Stanley Cup Finals.
I'm going to go Tampa, Colorado as well. That was mine, but I think Tampa's going to go 3 in a row.
Oh, I could see it. And
I'm not giving a game prediction, though. I'm not going that far.
Yeah.
Points, health is a big one.
Sure.
They say it's day to day, though, so I don't know how accurate that is.
All right. I have no faith in
They're winning
Bobrovsky.
without him.
I have no faith in Bobrovsky, so I think Tampa's going to, but actually, I think I picked Florida in my podcast today. I'm going to say Colorado, but it's going to be very tough for them to get there. And they'll have some tough moments. Why not? We'll say Tampa again. So Tampa, Colorado. And then what Stanley Cup champion, though, is going to be Tampa because they got Vasilevsky. He's the X factor.
Honestly, it wouldn't be that crazy to see them win again. I mean, their team's really fucking good.
Well, they know that one more cup and they become historic.
Yeah,
that solidifies them as we talk about
dynasty.
We talk about the Penguins of the early 90s, even the Flyers, right? Mid 70s.
Yeah.
But never a dynasty, though. They could have been one.
Blackhawks had the 3 in a decade, right? Or something like that as well.
3 and 6. 3 and 6, right?
3 and
I mean,
6.
Red Wings, would you say if they win 3 in a row, it's like on the same level as the Red Wings early 2000s?
I said the Red Wings are dynasty because there was too much space in between the 4. They had 97, 98, and 02. So that's the dynasty. But I just wouldn't lump in the 08 one into the
That Red Wings team.
Because different team in 08 with Zetterberg and Datsyuk.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Lidstrom's the best defenseman of all time.
Yeah.
I think
I agree.
Yeah,
well,
I think
Bobby Orr. After
Bobby Orr's first.
Yariv, don't go there. You're recording. You're live.
I didn't
Bobby
see
Orr's first.
I didn't see enough of Bobby Orr, but
I didn't see him at all. Really.
And the best way I could describe Bobby Orr, it's basically Bobby Orr was Babe Ruth, or Wayne Gretzky, where there was everybody else here, and then he was up.
He's in another class of his own.
Lidstrom, all things considered, the consistency, the how difficult the league was, the level of competition.
He was over a point per game every year or something like that. It was ridiculous.
The Norris trophies, but Bobby Orr is I mean, you could make an argument that he changed the game more than Gretzky changed the game.
Yeah, because of the difference. He was so ahead of his time.
But I'm old. Just remember that I'm old. I have gray hair, and I have all the books, and I watch the old footage. So, but it's definitely a debate to have. I think the debate is more Bork versus Lidstrom. Bruins fans they get so mad when you say Lidstrom was better, but I like pissing them off.
Really?
So
I don't know.
I think Lidstrom's definitely better.
Well, Bork was named to the first or second All-Star team. Like,
yeah, I know. Every single season. Every single season. Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. And there's a guy like Niedermeyer. I mean, there's a lot of defensemen, but I don't know. I just look at that Red Wings team with Lidstrom, and I'm just like, you saw as soon as Lidstrom was done, the team like dropped off a cliff.
Yeah.
He was like 40. It didn't matter. He literally left, and that was it. They plummeted. You know, they could literally lose every other player but him. And as soon as he left, entire franchise. It happened to the Flyers with Pronger. He was only here for a couple of years. We lost Pronger. We went from being a contender to a middling team like overnight.
You know what's crazy about Lidstrom? Yeah. When he broke into the league, he wasn't even the best defenseman on the Red Wings. Konstantinov was.
Right. Yeah.
And that when they won that first cup in 97, Lidstrom's reputation was a future blossoming all-star, but Konstantinov was the guy that you just feared, right? And he was really their number one more than anybody.
He was on the Red Army team as well, Konstantinov.
Yes. But they had the limo accident after celebrating, and he ended up in and that helped Lidstrom solidify. But within a matter of a year, Lidstrom was the number one. But Swedish people don't like hearing that. But go look at the Norris voting. Go watch the games. Konstantinov was the number one in Detroit back then.
I think the theme of this episode is that Russian players are kind of underrated right now.
Oh, of course.
So of course. Buy low, sell high on them right now. Yeah. And I'm interested to see if a guy like Yariv ends up suddenly making it a little higher than the draft, just because people are like, well, we just want to win,
Yeah.
All right. Well, Steve, what are you working on? You have anything to announce on here?
My draft report. It's going to be released probably like a week before the draft. If you want to, follow my work or whatever. I mean, the blog, I don't really write on it anymore because I'm so focused on the podcast, and I'm just deciding I'm off Twitter now, and it's a lot easier for me to watch games and really focus on just watching games and writing down notes and not having to worry about informing people about it. And the other thing is that the podcast that I do Mondays and Fridays, Monday for prospects, Fridays for the NHL, it's just a lot easier to go an hour and a half, 2 hours telling you what I've watched in that given week than tweeting out like 15 times a day. I saw this, there's a stat. I ain't going to lie, guys. Life has been so much better for me since I got off Twitter. It really had nothing to do with politics or with, trolls or, the cesspool that Twitter is. It was, I felt responsible that I needed to allot. I had, 14,000 followers. I had to allot time to them. I had to give back to them, and it took away. And also when I watched games, I'd have to put my head down to tweet and I'd miss stuff. And I don't like that. So now it's like, I put my feet up, I got my notepad and my clipboard, and it's lovely. I just, I take my notes down, then you hear on the podcast every Monday and Friday.
Better way to watch the games.
Yeah. I personally prefer. I'm so glad that you're podcasting again, because like I just took another trip and another flight, and I was just like, let me get caught up on some draft talk, and I just listened to your entire thing.
Same
I listened to 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah, I listened to a couple too, and I was coming back from Florida.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Sorry, hey, Vasili, sorry for some of the anti-Canadian stuff I say, but I try to balance things out.
Hey, that's okay. It happens.
I love Canada.
It's all in fun.
I love Canada. I don't like it. I don't like when TSN like dictates how like things operate.
Well, yeah. The thing is, I mean, with Canadian media and just like Canadian hockey fans and this is somebody who lives in Toronto and like has to deal with a lot of Leafs fans around me. A lot of the times, just because you're Canadian doesn't mean you know hockey better than everybody else, right? So I think with Canada,
and also the thing that always sets me off is when all the tournaments get given to Canada because they know it makes money. That's not fair. I think it should be, more fair that way. Like let other cities, other countries have these tournaments, and
then you grow the game.
You grow the game, exactly. And, that's really my main beef. But, we wouldn't be where we are today without Canada. So, I want Canadians to know that I love them. And it's just my beef is more with like a couple of people at TSN and Hockey Canada than anything else.
Yeah.
The media.
Pretty much.
But it is going to be an exciting draft. Steve, I'm going to have to ask you to come back on after we go through the draft for sure.
Let's do it.
I'm really excited about that because, it's exciting to get a top pick. At least we're relevant for at least a short window there. And it's going to be a really exciting one this year. I mean, in Montreal, with the Canadians picking first overall without a clear-cut number one, it's actually, I guess there is, but there's controversy. It's just going to be an interesting time. It's going to be an interesting draft.
Oh, yeah. Firings, trades, we'll have everything.
Yeah. Super excited. Vasili, obviously, do you have anything to tell people about as we sign off here?
Probably we'll have an article out at some point this week, as per usual on flyersnittygritty.com. So everybody check that out. Whenever it drops, I'll tweet it out for you guys.
Awesome. Yeah. And everybody, thank you again for listening. Thank you to Steve's. I did it again, dude. To Jim Steaks. I'm not allowed to say that.
Well, we're on with
Steaks.
Steve, so there you go.
Yeah, on 4th and South. Yeah, on 4th and South. Make sure to get a cheesesteak. Make sure to check them out and buy yourself a cheesesteak. Again, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you to Vasili. Thank you to Steve. Thanks again for joining. Remember, like, subscribe, comment, do the whole thing. We love you. Definitely reading everything. Also, not really on Twitter anymore, but definitely reading comments and everything. So if you have any,
I'm on there still. So
yeah,
if there's anything,
Vasili's still staying strong
on Twitter.
Yeah,
I mean, through all the bullshit anyway.
Yeah, well, when the season comes back on, maybe I'll pop on more often.
Yeah.
All right, thank you again, and remember, always stay ready.